Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. We want to wrap with yet another college hoop story because it's wild. It's late April. There's not supposed to be this much going on. But I'll tell you a quick story. It was Friday afternoon, and I had family in town, and I'm blessed to do what I do. I'm blessed to have a vibrant, happy, and healthy family. Everything's going great. But my family, we've been kind of trying to figure out a few days that could potentially work. And I was traveling for the NCAA tournament and I was back, but the portal was going to be crazy in April. So finally we settled on late April. We said, listen, NFL draft is Thursday night. But after that, Friday, Saturday should be pretty relaxed in the world that I am in, the college sports world. Yeah, not so much. That's because at about, 2:30, 3 o'clock Eastern, probably 11:30, 12 o'clock Pacific, I'm at lunch with the fam. The phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, what could possibly be happening? It's 3 o'clock Eastern time in April, the end of April. What could be going on that is such a big deal? Well, I looked down at my phone, and it was, in fact, a big deal. That's because Ron Holland, the top, let me say this, a universally regarded 5-star player, basketball, in the class of 2023, okay? So in other words, we're not talking about a sophomore or junior. We're talking about a kid that is set to graduate from high school here in about 10 minutes and was set to enroll at Texas, announced he was decommitting from the school. That is right, the number 2 player in the country, according to ESPN, the number 6 player, according to 24/7 Sports, had been committed to Texas since the fall, had stuck with Texas through the Chris Beard arrest, through the Chris Beard firing. And then, oh, by the way, literally like a month before he's set to enroll at Texas, he decides to decommit, ask out of his letter of intent, and open up his recruitment. And so it's absolutely crazy. I want to break it down. It's insane. And I do believe that there is one school specifically that makes a lot of sense for his services. Now, before we get there, let me just give you a quick kind of who, what, when, where, why of who Ron Holland is, okay? Like I said, really good player, number 2 ranked player in this current high school senior class. Again, about to enroll in college this year. Number 2 player according to ESPN, number 6 according to 24/7 Sports, but a big forward, about 6'7", 6'8", but really that modern new age player. Can step out, can shoot, can handle, can create for others, can finish at the rim, is an elite defender. He plays hard. He is just a really, really, really talented player. And so when Chris Beard in Texas got his commitment, it was seen as a mega win for the Longhorns. And when Rodney Terry held on to that commitment through all the Chris Beard chaos, it was seen as like a statement for Rodney Terry. Now, we'll get to Texas in a minute, but of course, as soon as he announces his decommitment, the question now becomes, well, where's he going to go? Who is he going to play for? And as I said, I believe that there is one school that makes more sense than any other. That school, it was one of his 3 finalists. Ron Holland originally chose Texas over UCLA and Arkansas. And I'll tell you, I really do believe that Arkansas should be considered the favorite to land this kid, and it's for a number of different reasons. So let's get into them all. First of all, there is that pre-existing relationship, right? These 2 sides went deep into the recruitment. This wasn't they called, first day that you could call and Ron Holland and his family didn't pick up. They not only picked up, they were very deep into that recruitment. Eric Musselman and his staff visited them multiple times. I remember, I think it was a Friday actually, looking on social media, and I see Eric Musselman hanging out at the Dallas Cowboys facility with Mike McCarthy, and I think it was Dak Prescott and whatever. It was because he was in Dallas recruiting Ron Holland, okay? So there's the pre-existing relationship there. It's not as though I'm just pulling Arkansas out of thin air. And from my understanding, I think it was a contentious isn't the right word, But I think it was a back and forth within the family over what was best. They're a Texas family from the state of Texas, deep Longhorn ties. But my understanding is during the recruitment, they really liked what Arkansas sold. And it was a really, really tough decision to choose Texas over Arkansas. But again, at the time, remember, Texas is top 5 in the country. Chris Beard is the head coach. It seems like everything is on the upward trajectory. And even though Texas had a great season that ended with a Big 12 tournament title and an Elite Eight appearance, it is still a much different situation in Austin than the one he committed to about 6-7 months ago. So you have all of those factors. But then beyond that, there was something else that was very interesting that happened over the last couple of days that you really got to be a sicko nerd like me to have noticed. But one thing I can tell you, okay, probably I'm a little bit older than I look. I've been doing this a long time. And as I've gotten deeper into this business, the one thing that I've learned is that in college sports, okay, when something that seems strange happens, there usually are no coincidences. Like something weird just doesn't happen out of nowhere. Usually something has happened which leads to another trickle-down effect, or something happens that seems surprising. And then 2-3 weeks later, you see, oh, this is why that happened. It all makes sense. So let me give you a very quick example. We talked about this kid at Mackenzie Mbako a few weeks ago. He was a 5-star kid committed to Duke. All of a sudden, we wake up on a Monday or Tuesday, and we're finding out that he plans on opening up his recruitment at Duke, okay? And so we're sitting there saying, this 5-star kid, superstar, top 10 prospect, why would he decommit from Duke? Then about 10 minutes later, you find out that Kyle Filipowski is going to come back. You find out that it's going to be a loaded backcourt, and he's going to look at his options. And so, again, it wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't out of nowhere. There was something that happened that led to the end result that Mackenzie Mbako was going to decommit from Duke. So what does that have to do with Ron Holland and his recruitment and potentially Arkansas making sense? Well, like I said, in college sports, nothing is ever coincidental. And as I just said a minute ago, there was something that happened on Thursday that didn't seem like a big deal at the time. But if you start connecting dots, you see that there might be something here. What was that thing? Well, on Thursday, Arkansas, which its roster is seemingly set outside of waiting for Devo Davis and Jordan Walsh to figure out if they're coming back or not, Arkansas had a player named Darian Ford hit the transfer portal on Thursday. Good player, 4-star player from the state of Arkansas, finished his freshman year. I believe he'll have success somewhere else. It was just, he's at one of the top programs in college basketball right now, and there's a lot of good players ahead of him. So he decides to enter the transfer portal. But what was interesting specifically about this one was that he had publicly announced that he was going to come back about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He released a statement. I'm grateful. I'm an Arkansas kid, blah, 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 whatever. But he basically released a statement. I plan on coming back. And then 2-3 weeks later, he hit the portal. So why do I bring it up? Again, nothing in sports is coincidental at the college level. Let's just talk this out and make sense of it. Because to me, you have a player who's from Arkansas, who wants to be at Arkansas, who publicly announced about 3 weeks ago that he plans on returning for his sophomore season. And then 3 weeks later, at the end of the portal cycle in late April, he then decides out of nowhere that he is going to transfer. And then a day later, a 5-star player that was heavily recruited by the school that he's transferring out of, which will need a scholarship, just so happens that 5-star player ends up decommitting. It doesn't, if it's a coincidence, it is a great, huge, wild coincidence. And I don't believe in coincidences at this level in college sports. What I believe is that, frankly, the Arkansas staff probably got wind that Ron Holland was not happy with the setup at Texas. And I believe that they needed to make a scholarship spot available for him. And we've talked about the scholarship numbers and this and that in the new world of college sports. I feel bad for the individual player, but this is the business of college sports. Colorado's had 45, 50 players enter the transfer portal in football in the last 6 months. That's part of the new wave of college sports. And so to me, what this strikes me as is Arkansas was at its scholarship limit. Arkansas needs another scholarship, and this guy has to enter the portal so that now a scholarship is available. Beyond that, there's a couple other things that make sense from the Arkansas perspective. One, there will very likely be a need at his exact spot. That's because Jordan Walsh, very talented freshman this past season, also from Dallas, also a former McDonald's All-American, is currently testing the NBA draft waters. And I haven't done a lot of my draft prep yet, but Jordan Walsh is a good player, and Jordan Walsh will get drafted on intangibles and talent and athleticism alone if he decides to stay in the draft. And what is the one thing I've said about Eric Musselman many times on this show? He is going to, when a player decides that they're going to test the waters, whatever, he's going to wish them the best. He is going to whatever, but he's not going to sit there until late April, early May, mid-May, late May for a kid to make his decision. So I think right now he's probably working under the assumption that Jordan Walsh will not be back. And if that's the case, you got to replace him. And if that's the case, there's a spot now open for Ron Holland, not only from a scholarship perspective, but also from a roster perspective as well. Finally, any other thing that Ron Holland would want, it would be available at Arkansas. Chance to compete for a national championship. Check. Chance to compete at the highest levels of the SEC. Check. Chance to be developed into an NBA player. Well, I was going to say Nick Anderson. Anthony Black, Nick Smith, on and on. All these guys, Jordan Walsh, are going to be NBA players next year. So you have the NBA pipeline. NIL is not an issue at the University of Arkansas. And so to me, it makes a ton of sense. Now, do I think it's done? I don't know that for sure. But when you start checking all the boxes of what a kid would need, and I didn't even mention, by the way, there's actual real ties because Anthony Black is a former high school teammate of this kid. And I believe, I could be mistaken, Anthony Black's stepfather was actually their high school basketball coach. So all the boxes are starting to get checked. But, let's just quickly roll through the other options on Ron Holland as well. First off, UCLA, first of all, let's start with Texas. Now, Ron Holland did say in his statement he would consider staying at Texas. I'll be blunt. I just don't see that one. Okay. And here's why. You've been committed to Texas for a year. They've probably been recruiting you for a minimum of like 2.5, 3 years, maybe even dating back before Chris Beard got the job in 2021. What could Texas do in the next 3 weeks to convince you that they're the right spot for you if they haven't done it already? In other words, if you've been committed to Texas for like 6 months now, probably longer, and you're now reconsidering it, what are they going to tell you that makes you feel like this is the place for you? So I think Texas is out. UCLA, which was the other finalist, I'll be blunt, I just don't see it. Now, UCLA actually probably could offer him the most playing time, the most opportunity, because UCLA is literally about to lose everything. But from an NIL perspective, I don't think that if it comes down to NIL, UCLA can compete with most of the other schools that are in the mix for Ron Holland. I don't think they can compete with a professional option that we'll discuss in a minute that might be of interest to Ron Holland. So UCLA is really good. But I don't know that program and the way that it operates is in the business of just bidding on players and outspending other schools and stuff like that. I'm not saying that's what it's going to come down to. I do not know that. But what I am saying is if that is a factor, if it is what it comes down to, I don't think UCLA can compete. Other options, I do think the professional route, that was actually my first thought, is the professional route. Ron Holland seriously considered G League Ignite. I've said it many times. G League Ignite, I'm a college basketball guy, but I can also see the value of that program if you're not crazy about playing college basketball, if you want to be all about basketball, if you don't care about the branding and spotlight that college basketball can bring. The program's run by Jason Hart. Jason Hart was a longtime assistant at USC. I believe when he was at USC, he was the best recruiter on the West Coast. Go back and look at all the USC players that are currently in the NBA. Chimezi Metu, Jordan McLaughlin, Evan Mobley, Isaiah Mobley's kind of bouncing back and forth between the NBA and the G League, Onyeka Okongwu, DeAnthony Melton. All these guys were recruited by Jason Hart. He's a great recruiter, great evaluator, great, developer of talent. So that one makes sense. One that I don't think makes sense, I had a few people ask me about this. Would Ole Miss, where Chris Beard is currently at, would that make sense for him? That's one I don't see. I'll be blunt. I don't see that one at all. And it's for a couple of reasons. First off, I don't know that Ron Holland ever committed to Texas to play for Chris Beard, right? Like, obviously the relationship's there, but I don't like he didn't go there to play for Texas Tech. He went to play for Texas Longhorn kid, whatever. Now, if Chris Beard had somehow landed at Texas A&M or TCU or something, maybe it's a little bit different. But Ole Miss, Mississippi for a Texas kid 1 year in a rebuild, call me crazy. I don't see that happening. I don't see a Texas kid following Chris Beard in a one and done year when he can go to UCLA, Arkansas, or finally the last school, and that's Kentucky. I've had a lot of people ask me about Kentucky. I'll be honest, I don't see it. And the reason I don't see it is for what we talked about a few weeks ago. There is, I believe, a need for a stretch four on that team going into next year. Now, I know that a 5-star recruit named Aaron Bradshaw, he's been told he can be a stretch four. He's like 7'1", 6'11", whatever he is. I believe he's best served as a 5. And I know he wants to play the 4, whatever. But I just bring it up because to me, I do think you need that stretch 4-ish type player. But Kentucky did not pursue Mackenzie Mbako, who they also recruited in this class. Mackenzie Mbako, the 5-star, was committed to Duke, as we just discussed. And so if you didn't go after Mackenzie Mbako, I just don't know why you would do it with Ron Holland, another player that you did recruit, but that you also kind of backed off on later on in the recruiting process. So right now, I would say Arkansas to me is the overwhelming leader. We'll obviously follow this in the coming weeks, days, and months. But this just became, between this and Mbako, who we'll probably talk about on Wednesday's show because his recruitment's starting to pick up. You just got 2 super high profile NBA lottery type talents just fall out of the recruiting skies in late April, mid-April, whatever.